What is up, guys? And welcome to episode 2 of the Practical Pivot Show. I'm your host, Sean Flack, and with me in the Practical Pivot studio is
Mike,
what up, Mike? How we doing?
what's up, man?
Um,
Another day, sir.
right, another day. So it is now January 3rd. So happy New Year to everybody. Our first show was put out before the New Year, so this is our first video of the new year. In today's episode, we're going to go over a video that Mike had brought to my attention called "Never Be a Wage Slave" by Coach Red Pill, I believe. There is a link in the description below. So if you're interested to actually watch the video we're going to talk about today, go ahead and click that link and head over to his YouTube channel. We're going to go ahead and just start off and talk about have Mike describe what the video is, and then we'll talk about it. So it is about changing your mentals, and of course we're talking about change on our show. So the first thing you generally have to change is how you think of things. And Mike had brought the video up to us, or to me, and we kind of agreed. I think this is where we need to start. So Mike, tell us about the video.
Well, just to keep it pretty brief, it's essentially just trading time for money, period. You can only get so far doing that because you have a limited resource with time, right? And you're trading that for money. And by doing so, he considers it being a wage slave. You're a slave to the wage. You're a slave to the person who is paying you. You have to do whatever they tell you to do, when they tell you to do it, how they tell you to do it. I mean, it's really that simple. He goes a little hard, as we kind of touched on, and I'm not saying, I don't want to say I disagree with what he was saying because, how I feel about a lot of stuff, right?
Right.
But the delivery, it might be a little hard. You might, turn some people off, but I appreciated the video and I liked it and have watched it a couple of times.
Okay. So my first initial impressions on it for sure were, man, this is a harsh guy. His delivery is definitely not for everybody, but the message is there. When he when he talked about trading time, and he talks about time as being a non-replenishable resource that we have, and that kind of hit close to home. When it comes to me and work, I try to do the bare basic minimum as far as hours because I have kids at home, and Mike's the same way. And that to me, that was a message for sure. How much of your finite resource are you willing to trade for money? And I think he even brought out a bunch of heavy hitters, like even if you're a doctor, a lawyer, you make 500,000, a million, you're only gonna make that much. So
Yeah.
I guess there was a couple things that were there any kind of major things about the video that kind of stood out to you, Mike, that like, why did you like it so much?
Well, for me, it's because it was more about, it wasn't necessarily about how much money you were making, right? Because I believe one of the examples he used was a corporate attorney that might make, I think he said like $360,000 a year, which, yeah, that's a great salary. That's a great salary. I believe he estimated to be like around 200,000 after taxes, whatever. But when you really think about it, it's like that's what you're gonna make. Somebody else is defining how much you're gonna make, what your worth is, and that part of it, I get. He's like, you kind of got a glass ceiling when you do that because again, there's only so many hours in a day. You can only bill so many hours, and this is how much money you're gonna make, no matter what else you do. For this particular employer, that's how much money you're gonna make. They tell you to do this, guess what? You want to keep making that money, you want to keep bringing that salary home, you better do
it. Yeah, I'd have to say you delivered that a whole lot nicer than he did. So totally agree with that. I'd have to say one of the profound things for me, and take what I say with a grain of salt, because I think I'm coming a little left field on my opinion on the video. Um, I thought that he was talking from a place of privilege, um, because the examples that put out to me was about about the attorney. He said, "Well, why be the attorney when you could be the law firm?"
Right.
And I was like, okay. He was like, or why be the burger flipper when you could own the burger place,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And with that, you would basically be paying people for their time for you to make infinite amount more money, or you wouldn't have a capped, um, you wouldn't have a cap on how much money you could make. So I guess my thing was, well, how do you do that? Like, how do you get your feet off the ground to let's go ahead and start a law firm? And you don't do that just by entering into the workforce and saying, I'm going to start a law firm.
Yeah.
So the way I took when he said that example was, well, you have to have a starting point, and your starting point's not going to be the starting line. Yeah, I feel that he was either set up with resources beforehand, and then taught a certain way. And the only way I could see him being taught that way and set up a resource like that was he's privileged. And not everybody has that, those resources.
Fair enough. However, I didn't really see it that way. When I watched it, it was more about because I believe he even used an example of you just mess up your time when you're young. When he was talking about playing video games. All right, man, I remember spend hours on Madden.
Right.
Back in the day, just man, my boy would come over and it's like, man, let's go, run it back, run it back, run it back. Next thing you know, 6 hours passed and we up here playing Madden. So when you're young, you're expected to do that type of stuff and make those mistakes with your time. But as you get older, if you don't change, then you'll just keep doing the same thing. It might not be Madden, but it'll be something else. You might come straight home from work and now you spending 5 hours watching YouTube or, binge watching X, Y, and Z. We all been guilty of it, right?
Right.
But so how do you expect to get out of that? How do you expect to make that change? And find yourself in a position where you can start your own stuff if you're not using that time, that valuable time, to start taking the steps necessary to get out of the job, to get out of the rat race. I didn't really take it as if he was saying just you need to, basically come out the womb and just now here I am. I'm an entrepreneur. It's like I didn't take it like that. It was just more about like, okay, here you are. You have to understand the value of your time. Now, once you do that, what are you going to do in order to move from the person earning the wage to the person providing the wage?
Right.
One
of the examples I want to bring up, which is very controversial, as the articles I read about it, was Kylie Jenner. Are you familiar with her, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, not like that. I'm not like.
Well, yeah, I'm just the reason why, and for me, it was they said that she's a self-made woman, is what they said, and of course, there's a lot of proponents of that. Well, not everybody has like the Jenners and the Kardashians, the resources,
right?
To start her own. I think she has her own makeup line or whatever. But the controversy was her claiming that she was self-made, and to me, that sticks out into kind of like what I was saying earlier, was the fact that you could call she's self-made because she did exactly that. Instead of catting off at the club, she was probably, sitting in her business schools or talking to her managers or whatever, and using her time to, now be as prominent in like the makeup world as she is. But number one, she was taught a different way. It's not like, we go out and teach our kids, to think like that, because sometimes we have a problem thinking like that too. But of course, her resources as well. And they're like, you can't call yourself a self-made millionaire or a self-made successful business person because you weren't. Because there were people that were coaching you, and there were people that gave you their resources, and people that lined you up with the right people. So I guess that's after reading those articles, and then of course seeing his point of view, which I thought it was good. I thought it was a great video. But it's just just like, okay, well, how do we start? How do we get there?
Well, I think that's a different situation in the fact that, yeah, this comes from a super popular family. I mean, the resources, it's just an abundance of resources around. Oh, I have an idea for this, and an hour later it can be a phone call and a team of a dozen people over there ready to get things going, right?
Right.
Those aren't resources that the average person has.
Right.
However, in her defense, and I agree with you on the self-made part, I don't necessarily think it's a self-made situation, but we were talking about video games and just catting off time and doing that sort of stuff. If you were in a position that she was in, growing up, family with a ton of money, right? You know how easy it would be to be like, man, I'm about to go get this car, that car, go hang out here, do this, find yourself in a club 4 nights a week. You know what I mean? And just kind of living that lifestyle.
That's true.
Even though I don't necessarily agree with the self-made part of it, it still takes a tremendous amount of hustle and a tremendous amount of just dedication to even get to the point that she got to, because look how much she's increased her overall wealth just from where it was, And I know she's, like I said, I know she's had a team of people, but there's a whole lot of other rich kids, famous families and celebrities that haven't had the kind of success that she had. So she found her lane and she made it happen. So I respect that. I respect that about her.
And I totally agree with you on that. Like and you kind of pointed it out. She actually had more opportunity to cat off than the regular person did.
Yep.
She didn't. So, okay. All right. You got me there, Mike.
But you know what? One other thing I wanted to say too, and it's like when you brought up like, where do we start, right?
Yes.
I listen to like Dave Ramsey and Gary Vee, and just a lot of the popular people that's like on YouTube and podcasts, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that we could do, and that's more practical and as far as our lifestyle, right?
That's what we're here about. What can we do that's practical?
It's taking the little steps, man. And it's like, for me, one of last episode you would ask me what one of my goals were, or I think you didn't want to refer to it as a New Year's resolution or whatever, but one of my goals, and I was saying like, I just want to get things done. I want to make it happen, right? That still holds true. But another one is, I'm getting rid of like my credit cards. Well, I only have like a couple, but I pay my credit card balance off every month. I never have anything roll over into the next month. But now I'm just like, you know what? Forget it. I don't even want a credit card no more. Right. I'm like, because every little thing, like even if it's credit, even if I pay it off, or if it's a car loan or anything like that, if I can kind of move myself away from that sort of stuff too, that it loosens the stranglehold that the job has on me. I'm less dependent on it by taking little steps. And those are things that I think that the average person can try to do. It's like I ride a bucket, man. I think you know that. I got a bucket. I'm not tripping. It's like it is what it is, man.
You know what? That brings up a really good point. We talked about the mental change of things, and I didn't think about that. Well, get rid of your debt faster and whatever, and you could actually not rely on the job as much. I never thought about that before, and it's funny because I do spend hours on YouTube watching stuff or whatever, and a lot of those YouTubers that are up there don't have debt, and they don't carry debt.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure that's part of the reason why they don't need to have like one of those super high paying jobs, and YouTube pays enough for them because they don't have that. And you said it, that stranglehold that I know I do. Like I think we've had conversation before. I wish I was you.
No, I wouldn't. No, you don't. No, you don't.
Well, let me say in that aspect.
Nah.
And that'll be a conversation for another day. So,
right.
I love your first step. That for sure is something everybody can do. And for me, it's about the mental teaching of it. It is changing that mentality. And that video really, the profound message for me was looking at your job as you are a higher paid slave.
Mm-hmm.
And and just like what you said, one thing that I would say is change your mentality and teach. So maybe we don't have the resources that Kylie has or other folks have that we don't, but we can change the way we look at things.
Absolutely.
So that's definitely one of the first steps, and a practical pivot, we'll say, is change the way you look at it. And you for sure brought up, like, if you get rid of your debt, you are less reliant on the job that you're a slave to than you would be if you carry that debt. And I had to think about that. So thank you.
And the thing is, it's like, and don't get me wrong, I need my job big time, right?
Right. Amen to that.
I need my job. But even if you're not in a position to get rid of it, it's just don't create more, It was funny because I was thinking about this one day on the way to work, and I was like, a lot of people know somebody who's been in a relationship, right? Because I look at a job as a relationship.
Okay.
It's supposed to be mutually beneficial. I'm supposed to feel good about it. They're supposed to feel good about having me, right?
Right.
So I'm like, a lot of people know somebody who's been in a relationship with somebody for a long time, and they might have had one kid, knowing they shouldn't have been in that relationship. Then they'll have another and another, and they're continuing to tie themselves to that person and make it harder and harder, right?
Right.
To get out of that relationship,
right? Or yeah,
that's kind of, to me, like what getting more and more debt is. If you're in a job or in a field that you don't necessarily want to be in, but it's hard for you to make that change because you're so reliant on the job that you have. And for me, that's almost what it's like. It's like, man, why am I going to keep having kids with this person if this is not somewhere I want to be? Why am I going to keep doing things to make this job more and more important to me,
Right.
So, yeah.
Kind of where I'm at. Hella knowledge on me. I was like, damn, that's true. And the podcast, the Dad's Life podcast, the next topic that I'm going to be talking about, you swear to God I hate kids. The way I'm about to talk on this next episode, you don't swear to God I hate kids. But that's so true. Like it's harder to leave the more ties you have to it, and yeah, I totally agree with your analogy. And that right there, like, really hits close to home. Like, man, that's true. And some people shouldn't have kids. I'm sorry.
Right.
Some people don't need to reproduce.
Yeah, true that.
Okay, let's see how we're doing for time. Oh, got about 4 minutes. We're almost right on time.
All right, cool.
So what I'm taking from this is I really did like the video. And as a matter of fact, I kind of wasted maybe another 30, 40 minutes watching some of his other videos. So he's a very crude guy.
Mm-hmm.
You go over there, you check it out. There is a lot of thought, profound, and his other messages that he has, like one of the videos says, "Don't be a stepdad," and that one's pretty harsh, but he makes a lot of valid points.
I haven't watched that one. I know for sure I haven't watched that one.
Right, probably not. I didn't like it either, but I was like, you know what though, he makes some good points, but he does is very controversial. So if you do head over there to watch his video, or whatever. Take everything with a grain of salt, and if you get offended easily, don't go over there. But I really like the video. I like the message of it. Thank you, Mike, for bringing it to my attention. And I think it's definitely something that somebody could learn something from, especially when we're talking about just the minor changes we could make.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, you know, they say a lot of times you can learn something from somebody you don't necessarily agree with, or somebody who you think might not be as smart as you or whatever. You know, he seems highly intelligent to me.
Right.
But
I agree.
yeah, it was just one of those things. It's like I'll flip through YouTube and I'll just start clicking on stuff that I think I might be able to learn something from.
Hmm.
You know, and that was just happened to be one of those videos. And I was like, man, you know, so I looked at it a couple of times and I'm like, I can really feel where he's coming from with this. Again, even though I might not 100% agree with the delivery, I definitely can feel the message.
Okay. So, just to wrap things up here, it's episode 2, Practical Pivot. My name's Sean Flack, and I got Mike with me here as a co-host, and we are talking about Never Be a Wage Slave. That was put on by Coach Red Pill. Again, I don't want to butcher his name. A link down in the description. Got any final words, Mike?
Make the small changes before, you know, make the small changes before you can make something big happen. Just it doesn't have to be starting your own firm off the bat, but just, you know, if there's something in your life that you can do to start making small steps in order to get the results that you want. You just have to identify what that is for you.
Right. And, for me, the first thing is thinking about it completely different, because I know as it is right now, I'm like head rat in this race. And I'm definitely trying to learn something new. And so, yeah. Well, everybody, thank you for watching. That's all the time we have for today's episode. If you like what you're seeing, definitely like the page, subscribe to, or like the video, subscribe to the page, share it. Definitely leave a comment, because we're also in this to learn as well. Until the next episode, we'll talk to you the next one.
Peace.
Peace.